Perspectix.
If we attach your head to another body, who wakes up? You, the donor, or something new? Something that's neither of you? And be honest, would you be willing to lose yourself just to defeat death? Sometimes I sit in front of a mirror and just stare at my reflection. It feels natural, right? That's my face. That's my voice. But then, a terrifying thought creeps in. If tomorrow, surgeons cut my head off and stitched it onto another body, who would be looking back at me? My memories would still be mine. My fears, my jokes, my logic, all safe inside my skull. But looking down, I would see hands that aren't mine, a chest that breathes with a rhythm I don't know, legs that have walked paths I've never seen. We've been told for centuries that I am my brain. That identity is just electricity firing between neurons. But what if we are wrong? What if the feeling of being me isn't just in the head? The more I dig into this, the more disturbingly clear it becomes. If head transplantation ever becomes real, we might cheat death, but we might lose something much more important. We might lose ourselves. Let me start by clarifying something that completely flips how we think about this surgery. We keep calling it a head transplant. Sounds simple, right? Familiar, almost harmless. But the moment you slow down and question the name, everything starts to feel wrong. In a normal organ transplant, the donor gives an organ, a kidney, a heart, a liver. The receiver keeps their body. Their biological identity remains intact. No matter what happens, you still wake up inside your own physical system. You remain you. But here the rules quietly reverse. The donor is not giving a small part. The donor is giving the entire body. The receiver is only bringing the head. So what are we really doing? Are we attaching a head to a body? Or attaching a body to a head? The deeper you think, the more the terminology collapses. Technically speaking, this starts looking like a body transplant. You keep your brain, your memories, fears, habits, secrets. But everything else becomes foreign. New hormones, new immune system. A body that lived a completely different life before you ever arrived. At first it sounds mechanical, like swapping tires on a car, clean, controlled. Replace the broken part and move on. But the human body isn't a machine. A car doesn't have hormones that rewrite your emotions overnight. A car doesn't carry trillions of gut bacteria whispering into your brain. A car doesn't have a heart that speeds up when it senses a face tied to buried memories. So here's the real question I can't shake. When your brain connects to a stranger's biological system, who is actually in control? Are you driving the body, or is the body quietly learning how to drive you? The real children of Frankenstein. If you think this is just a modern science fiction story, then you haven't met Vladimir Demikov yet. This Soviet scientist who lived in the 1950s didn't just produce theories. He carried out real experiments that pushed the limits. His goal was to test the impossible. And to do that, he conducted experiments that went far beyond ethical boundaries. In one of the most disturbing, he surgically attached the head and front legs of a puppy onto the neck of a larger adult dog. Yes, you heard that right. This was not a drawing, not a model. It was a living being. And the truly horrifying part was this. The experiment was not performed on a dead organism. Both heads were alive. Two different consciousnesses were trying to exist within the same body. The puppy's head would wake up, open its eyes, yawn, and sometimes even try to bite the carrier dog's ears. They could drink milk separately. But because the puppy had no stomach, the milk it drank flowed directly out through a tube. Medically alive, but biologically an incomplete life. They survived for days. Was it a scientific success? Or a grotesque miracle? That question has been debated ever since. Years later, Robert White entered the scene, an American neurosurgeon working in the 1970s. He pushed even further through the dark door Demikov had opened. This time the experiment was performed on a monkey. White successfully transplanted the head of one monkey onto the body of another. And then, the awaited moment came. The monkey woke up. It could see its surroundings. It could hear sounds. It could even bite reflexively. Its consciousness was intact. But the body did not belong to it, because the spinal cord could not be reconnected. Everything below the neck was completely paralyzed. It could not move. It could not escape. It could only feel and exist. According to the experimental reports, the monkey was extremely distressed, frightened, agitated, and aggressive. Now pause for a moment and imagine. Your consciousness is awake, but you have no control. You are trapped inside a body that is not yours. You cannot move. You can only think, only be aware, forced to live as a consciousness existing on a foreign body. Maybe the stories of Frankenstein were never entirely fiction. Maybe we crossed that line long ago inside dark laboratories, and we simply choose not to see it. Fast forward to our time. Enter Sergio Canavero, an Italian neurosurgeon who sounded like he stepped out of a sci-fi novel. With absolute confidence, he announced, "We are ready." He called the operation the Heaven Project, Head Anastomosis Venture. The idea was simple to say, but terrifying to imagine. Transplant a living human head onto a healthy donor body. And he wasn't alone. He had a volunteer, Valery Spiridonov, a Russian computer scientist living with Wernicke-Hoffmann disease, a severe muscle wasting condition that slowly takes control away from the body while leaving the mind fully aware. Valery knew his physical future was limited. For him, this wasn't just an experiment. It was a chance at movement, independence, maybe even survival. Around 2015 to 2017, headlines exploded. Interviews spread across global media. The world watched with a mix of curiosity, hope, and fear. Some scientists called it revolutionary. Many others called it medically impossible and ethically dangerous. Plans were discussed publicly, timelines were mentioned, and for a moment, it felt like humanity was standing on the edge of something irreversible. But then, the momentum faded. No confirmed human surgery ever took place. Valery eventually stepped away from the project. He built a life. He married, became a father, and chose the reality he knew over the unknown risks of becoming the first human chimera. The story quietly shifted from imminent breakthrough to unresolved controversy. Yet the unsettling question never fully disappeared. Even today, people still wonder, behind closed doors in a private lab somewhere, has anyone tried to cross that line already? There is no verified evidence that it has happened, but the idea continues to haunt the imagination. So why hasn't this ever happened publicly? The problem isn't sewing skin or reconnecting arteries. Surgeons already know how to do that. The real nightmare is the spinal cord. Think of the spinal cord like a massive fiber optic cable. Not just one wire, but millions of microscopic glass threads bundled together. Each one carries a different command. Move your hand, feel heat, balance your body, sense pain. Now imagine taking a knife and slicing straight through that cable. It doesn't just disconnect, it shatters the entire communication system. To make a head transplant work, you wouldn't just reconnect one or two nerves. You'd have to align millions of invisible strands perfectly. One tiny mismatch, connecting a move your left toe signal to a feel pain in your right thumb pathway, and the body's entire communication map becomes chaos. Movement fails. Sensation becomes distorted. The system breaks down. Neurosurgeon Sergio Canavero suggested using a chemical called PEG, polyethylene glycol. He described it like a biological superglue, something that could instantly fuse the cut nerve membranes back together before they die. The idea sounds almost cinematic. Slice, align, apply the chemical, and the bridge between brain and body reforms. But here's where reality hits hard. Most mainstream neuroscientists argue that this is closer to science fiction than science. They say once the spinal cord, that biological highway, is severed, the original pathways are effectively destroyed. Not just disconnected, erased. Even if nerves touch again, rebuilding the precise original map may be impossible with current technology. And without that map, without that living bridge, consciousness may remain trapped, awake, aware, but disconnected from the body it's supposed to control. At that point, what remains isn't a functioning human body. It's a head sustained by machines, attached to flesh that cannot truly respond. Here is where things stop being purely medical and start becoming deeply philosophical. There is a controversial concept called cellular memory. Some transplant patients have reported strange changes after surgery. New food cravings, unfamiliar habits, even sudden emotional shifts they cannot explain. A few heart transplant recipients claimed they began enjoying music or activities their donors loved. Science debates these stories heavily, but the question they raise refuses to disappear. And then there's the gut, often called the second brain. Your stomach and intestines contain an enormous neural network known as the enteric nervous system. It produces around 95% of the body's serotonin, the chemical deeply tied to mood and emotional balance. This means your feelings are not only shaped by your brain, but also by the body constantly sending signals back to it. So imagine this. If my head is attached to a professional bodybuilder's body, do his hormones begin to reshape my emotional baseline? Does elevated testosterone subtly shift my aggression, confidence, or risk-taking behavior? And if the body once belonged to someone with severe anxiety, does my brain begin receiving constant stress signals from a nervous system trained to panic? According to the Somatic Marker Hypothesis, our decisions are never purely rational. The brain constantly reads feedback from the body, heart rate, hormones, gut sensations, to guide choices. That instinctive gut feeling may actually be the body influencing the mind. Change the body, and you may change the signals. Change the signals, and you may change how decisions are made. Over time, you may even change the personality itself. So the person who wakes up after surgery might carry my memories, my childhood, my voice, but their emotional reactions could feel unfamiliar. Their instincts might not match the person they used to be. They might look in the mirror and recognize the past, yet feel like a stranger living inside it. And that leads to the most unsettling possibility. The result might not be the donor and not be me. It could be something new. A hybrid consciousness. A psychological fusion shaped by two biological histories. Not one identity continuing, but a new self emerging from the collision of two lives. Let's step away from biology and look at the chaos this would create in society. If a 90-year-old billionaire buys the body of a 20-year-old accident victim, and then has a child with his wife, genetically, who is the father? The sperm belongs to the body. The DNA belongs to the donor. The child would genetically be the offspring of the dead donor, not the billionaire head. And that's just the beginning. What happens to inheritance laws? Does the child have a biological claim tied to a legally deceased donor? Would a dead man suddenly have living descendants he never chose to create? Identity, lineage, family trees, all of it fractures. And what about crime? If I murder someone and then swap my body, does the new body go to jail? Or does the punishment follow the brain? If the body I bought was previously a criminal and the police find my fingerprints at a crime scene, am I guilty? Who does the law recognize? The DNA or the consciousness? We haven't even fully written the laws for AI yet. We are absolutely not ready for the legal nightmare of divisible humans, not morally, not legally, not socially. Maybe there is a reason why our heads are firmly attached to our shoulders. We are obsessed with living forever. We treat the body like a spare part, like a battery to be replaced when it runs out. But perhaps we are more than the sum of our parts. Perhaps the connection between brain and body is not a mechanical attachment, but something we barely understand. If head transplantation becomes possible, the rich will never truly die. They will simply move on, cycling through bodies the way we upgrade phones, consuming youth as a resource, extending power across generations that were never meant to overlap. The gap between rich and poor would no longer be measured in money, but in lifespan. It sounds like a dystopian movie, but the scalpel is already hovering over the skin. The technology is no longer unthinkable, only unfinished. And when we finally look into the mirror after the surgery, we might see a living person. The eyes might blink, the lungs might breathe, the heart might beat. But I'm not sure we will see a human. Because maybe, just maybe, being human was never about defeating death. Maybe being human means accepting that our story has an end, and that meaning comes from knowing it cannot go on forever. If this idea lingers in your mind tonight, support the channel with a like. Subscribe to Perspectix. The next perspective is closer than you think.